Welcome back. Okay, let's ground ourselves in our greatness because, that's what we do here. Yesterday, my great thing was, I was super focused and on it, and I'm all for that. And then it was just like, okay, let's take a break. Hey, guess what? In case you don't take breaks, you should know that they are vital, and I am all for the hustle. No question. But what I have learned over the past 2 years is how vital rest, recovery, sleep are to balance it all out. Like hustle, 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 hustle. No question. But take a lunch break. Take a lunch break. You don't have to do it every day, but take that time to love yourself, to give yourself energy back. So yesterday I sat down for my lunch break and I'm like, can you just serve me something that will give my mind a break, but also allow it to grow. And so, per usual, I go to just get on YouTube TV and put Friends on. Because it's quiet noise. I don't have to watch it. I already know what happens. I've watched it a million times. Nothing shocks me, and it's just kind of background. And I go to put that on, and for some reason, YouTube TV just isn't working, isn't connecting, isn't casting, isn't doing anything. And so I'm like, okay, we'll go over to Netflix. And I'm kind of scrolling Netflix, and this new title pops up, and I've never seen it before. And it's Hillbilly Elegy. And to me, I'm like, elegy, what even is that? And I kind of look at what it's about, and I'm instantly intrigued. So I press play, and people. I don't make that many recommendations. Okay, I absolutely make a lot of recommendations. This is what I'll say. Watch that. Watch Hillbilly Elegy on Netflix. I believe that it's trending. It may even be in the top 10, so you'll probably watch it even regardless of my suggestion to watch it. What I will say is there is a lot of harsh language in it, but it is so necessary, and it helped me develop what I'm even going to talk about today. And so it was just a gift. And I think really my great thing from yesterday was being gifted that, and even knowing to ask for that, right? And knowing that I could possibly ask for something and receive it, and that you're worth asking for what you want. You should ask for what you want. You think that it's not going to come, and boom, served up on a freaking platter. And just so timely, so necessary, so beautiful, so just true to exactly where I'm at in this work. And if you're on a similar path, I think that this movie is really going to speak to you. There's also a book, which I'll probably be looking at purchasing, hopefully within the next couple of months. So that's my great thing. Taking a freaking break. Taking a break and then asking for something that could have a dual purpose of service. Not only giving me mental rest, but also serving me something that I truly needed. Here for that. So here for that. So go ahead, take time, recognize yourself for your great thing. I just can't wait even to get into this topic. Okay, so let's just move. But do your great thing. Don't move too fast. Don't skip. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Go directly to your great thing and do it. Right after this, actually, you could just push pause. Okay. So yesterday I wrote a blog on this idea that I wasn't really allowed, I never felt comfortable showing up as my full self. And I want to retrace the steps of that. I want to retrace the hurt of that. And what I find interesting about childhood or about your memories is that you only remember a few specific things. And it's hard to really dive in because even those are a little bit blurry and they get blurrier over time. So if you're like 20 something, everything may be fresh and new and you don't have, nothing's blurry. But what I find is the older you get, the blurrier things get. So for me, like specific things, and even now into adulthood, like tracing back even 7 years ago when I first had my daughter, like specific things stand out. And for me in my childhood, like, yes, there are warm things, but mostly there are like specific trauma moments that stand out. Like there are core pain points. And as I started to trace those back, I start to realize that those are really the core memories or the core makeup of things that informed the narratives that I cling to today. So the title of this episode is like, do we even need to go there? Because, I think it's really easy for all of us to just escape and push past, and that's what we're told to do. I would say the majority of people who do the work that I'm doing, right, like motivational speakers, it's all just like, you can push through it. And I'm kind of preaching the exact opposite. Don't. Like, there's a significant reason that you're feeling that, and if we just continue to push through it, it's going to manifest in a different way, but it won't go away if we don't ever learn to deal with it. So this has been an active push. And I think, when I first started, I had this thought that I didn't want anyone to see like the end version of Hanna and not know everything that it took to get to that place. Like, if they wanted that, they could have it. It would exist somewhere so that no one only gets the end interpretation. Like I had with so many of the people who inspired me. Like I had to dig and research, and a lot of people won't do that, right? And so I just wanted to offer it all up on a platter. And show people that it isn't that easy, right? Like I already have this inherent optimism, great. And so, yeah, I probably could have just stepped right into like making a motivator work, just start working on it. I could probably floor past all of the pain. But what I had recognized in my own life is that it was coming back up. And so if I didn't start to deal with those trauma things, those things that had hurt me, the death of my dream, essentially, if I didn't go back and retrace my steps and find those pain points, I would never be the strongest version of myself. And so I started to do that. We started to trace everything. Now we're in this place where I'm tracing triggers, where I'm tracing things that informed me not trusting how I just show up as default, right? Like who I just inherently am. Why did I feel like I had to mask that? What were those things that were told to me that didn't allow full Hanna to show up? And so that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been retracing. And what I loved about Hillbilly Elegy is he shows us those moments, talks through them. And I think what's most important about that is he didn't continue the cycle, right? And that's really where you see the most growth, is your unwillingness to continue doing that. But he was like called home, and he could have just pressed through, not went back, just went on living his life. But if he had never dealt with it, it would have came back up, right? Like it would have slowed him down, hurt him, or completely stopped him at some point. And so as he's tracing this back, he's going back to these like moments in time where these things like informed where he is now, sometimes negatively, sometimes positively. And he starts to heal that trauma just by talking it out. And what I find is so beautiful is this, right? Being able to talk through those things or write those things or experience those things again and heal because you are willing to go back there. And so many times we're told the opposite of like, don't get muddled in all that craziness. Like, just share some quotes, move, love yourself, right? But like, loving yourself is such a complex idea, right? It really is. Because fully loving yourself is trusting that you will be accepted in this world as you are. And in order to do that, we have to truly believe that. And so many of us have been told conflicting things about how we present to the world. And so I wanted to trace back this thought that my lightheartedness or my silliness wasn't really accepted. And so I started to do that work yesterday. I blogged on it. I'm continuing to talk about it. But here's where. And this was like a triggering moment for me yesterday. So it's kind of funny. So yesterday, our tree fell. We cut down a Christmas tree every year. This is a tradition. This is something that I did with my family. It's also something my husband did with his family. And so it's something that we continue to do with our family. And so we went and we cut down this Christmas tree. And I had told all of them, like, I want we get big, crazy, full, long needle. I don't know the exact kind of tree that it is, but full, long needle, beautiful, full tree. And I had said, I think I just want something that's thin and very, very tall. And so my children would go on to pick out the fullest, thickest tree that we have ever brought into our home. And as a result of that decision, said tree would fall. Right? Because the bigger the tree, the harder it is to like get it to stand. And you have tree stands, but it's kind of difficult. It's not an exact science of like, put it here, screw the screw. It's like, it's finicky, okay? So the tree falls. And I'm instantly, and of course it falls at like 11 o'clock at night, and it's this big, huge bang, and it wakes me up, but not my husband. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is there a robber in this house? Holy crap. And I'm like, get your gun. Why are you still laying here? How did you not hear that? That was so freaking loud. Anyways, it was just the tree. No one needed to worry. So we go down, we pick up the tree, and I remember as a kid, like the stress of Christmas, period. Christmas was always a stressful time in my house because it was, I think, well, first and foremost, if you have 4 kids and you have to buy Christmas presents for 4 children, there is no question that there is added stress during this time. And that was my parents' life. So I don't question the tension at all. Trust me, I have 2 kids. I'm still trying to figure out like how you do this. How did you make 4 kids' Christmases perfect and beautiful every year? But I could pick up on the tension, right? Even if they were shielding me from it, even if it wasn't like a conscious conversation, I could still feel that energy. Anyways, so one rowdy Saturday, my brother and I don't know, we were maybe like 7 and 6, 8 and 7, maybe, I don't know. Either way, we're like going crazy playing. I don't know what we were doing, but it was shortly after we had gotten our Christmas tree. And somehow a sock, my brother's sock, ends up thrown on the top of the Christmas tree. And the two of us were not supposed to go near the Christmas tree. It would be certain failure because we are just too crazy to come near anything like that, anything that fragile, anything that important, anything that like topsy-turvy. But nonetheless, the sock was on there, and since we were not supposed to be by the tree, someone had to get the sock down before our parents found out that there was a sock on the tree. And so I was going to do that. I certainly was tall enough to grab this sock. I certainly could handle doing this. And my brother would not be capable of doing said thing. So I get up as close as I possibly can, try reaching, and end up like, okay, if you've ever seen Elf, and if you haven't, just maybe YouTube it. He, like, they're trying to put the Christmas topper on, and he runs and, like, ends up falling short of the top, but, like, grabs onto the tree. So that's what I did. And I wasn't running necessarily, but I definitely, like, had to do a reach and then realized that I was falling. And so I just grabbed onto whatever was closest to me, and that ended up being the tree. And so me and said tree tumbled to the ground. And instant chaos and anger ensue. And I know that I'm about to get it, right? And I can remember the exact, like, feeling in my stomach of like, oh, you aren't going to be able to cover this one up. And it was a result of you doing something you weren't supposed to do. Now, doing like triple double what you were not supposed to do, you're in trouble. And that's a core. There was always this calming narrative that was never had to be told to my two older sisters. Ever. Right? They were always calm and perfect and beautiful. And I don't even remember them being like little kids because they were so grown up by the time I was a little kid that I don't remember. And they weren't. I mean, they weren't that much older than me, but there was always like the girls. The girls are so good. And my brother and I were just like hellions. And anyone that we know can probably attest to this. I can't remember us being anything but that in our youth. And so I think it was just so early on known that Hanna was out of control and mad and crazy. And there really wasn't ever a good instance of Hanna existing in her true self, which was like out of control and crazy. There was never a moment where that was okay or even celebrated. But nonetheless, it's who I was, true to my core. I could never escape it. The silliness, the madness, the craziness was just always who I was. And I'm not sure that there was ever an acceptable outlet other than when I finally found sports. It seemed like that was the clearest path. But that moment was when I remember for the first time being like, okay, you were even told to not act like this. You are not allowed to be this person, even though that's who you are. It doesn't have a place. And that would have been at like 8, 9 maybe. And I remember just like turning off that silliness meter right then and there. As the tree came crashing down, I was just like, are you going to keep being this person? And as a result of that, right, years and years of covering up and trying not to be that person. And so here's how it shows back up into adulthood. right? Because it always will. And when we don't go back and heal that, when we don't go back and look at that wound moment, we tend to be triggered and have anger anytime that either we aren't allowed to be that person again when we're trying to be, or when we're being asked to be that person and we've been told for so many years that it isn't allowed. Right? So for me, that looked like stepping into creative paths where that person was called on and necessary and needed. And every time it would like flare up this anger in me. And it didn't come out as like anger towards that movement, but just like overall anger and anxiety because, right, it was conflicting. It was conflicting with this narrative that I had told myself for a very long time that she doesn't belong. And so that would show up in different ways, usually in anxiety and angst towards just the people around me for no real reason. But other than I was just being triggered at work and I was lashing out where it was, acceptable for me to lash out. And now we're going back, right? We're tracing back. We're trying to find and heal and recover from that. And one of the most effective ways that I've found to do that is just writing and experiencing it again. Taking myself back to the catapult jump into the tree and falling to the ground. And as I fell to the ground, realizing that I didn't want to be in trouble all the time anymore. Like that I have to let this person go in order to grow up and be accepted like my sisters. You can't just be silly Hanna the rest of your life. Grow up. And that's pretty much where we left off, right there on the ground of the tree, growing up and never looking back. And that would be okay, right? That didn't misserve me. It got me to where it got me, but it also got me to a conscious internal conflict space where I was denying who I was truly called to be in this world. And that conflict will show up the more that you try to come into grips with who you are, right? And most people look at those things and they just go, oh, I got this. Let me get a new planner. Let me put some quotes up, right? And I talked about that yesterday. But truly, that's the toxic culture that's out there with this work, is that you can get through anything. Just be strong. And while you can, we can't ignore the fact that these things exist, because when we do, we don't allow ourselves to fully exist in the world, right? We have to go back and heal from those traumas, those things. And you can be sitting here and saying like, oh, I have such a great life. I had such a great upbringing. There is trauma there. And I'm not asking you to like go have it all out with your upbringing. Like I don't have anyone to go back to and say like, why did you do this? How did this happen? And some people will have that. But for me, there isn't that pain or that confliction, because I really was raised really well and I had a great childhood. Most of what I've been telling myself was just developed from my understanding of the world and how I was being called to operate in it. My parents, no question, needed to rein in the crazy. Like, they already had 4 freaking kids. They don't need this mad, crazy ass ginger running around their house gone buck wild, tearing down Christmas trees and rescuing socks from the top. Like, they don't need that madness in their life. They needed calm, non-crazy children. They certainly did not need this girl to come in and just rain on everyone's parade. Right? Like, there were reasons most of the time reserved for Hanna was outside. Right? We had to find a way to escape this energy. So there's no pain there. There's no, like, my parents they weren't wrong, right? My interpretation of that was the problem. And so it doesn't even have to be that painful, right? You don't have to go back and track these things and blame someone. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an accountable past relationship where we go back and heal those things so that we can bring that energy back, right? Like, I want all of that person back. Being silly and crazy and like navigating the world the way that I used to, I need her back. She's only going to strengthen and drive who we can become, the thoughts and the ideas that would stem from that person being back here is beautiful, right? But I had just told myself for a very long time that there's no place for silly in the adult world. Silliness doesn't belong. Silliness never belonged. Even as a kid, it was just like, no, you gotta grow up. At some point, you're gonna need to make money. You can't make money on being silly. I'm just gonna go ahead and slap that narrative right in the face. People make money being silly all the time. Like, more money than most of the people who aren't silly. So, I'm just saying, if you watch Hillbilly Elegy, what you will find is him retracing those trauma moments and him deciding that he's going to change the outcome. Whereas when you don't go back and look, when you don't go back and allow yourself to experience that again, right? We tend to get re-triggered. We tend to allow those things to bubble back up, and we can quiet them, but they always come back up. And if you don't want to spend years of your life recovering from a trigger, then it's best to just go back and start healing. Just start telling yourself that story. Start exploring those spaces, really deeply exploring them. Today, my remembrance of that Christmas tree as we came crashing down together, like, that was the moment where I was just like, I should be more serious and more like my older sisters. And I shouldn't just be this silly kid who runs around the house with her younger brother and causes chaos. I shouldn't be that person, right? And the chaos part, okay, I probably shouldn't, nor could I be that person. But really, like, the full acceptance of who I am takes me reprocessing all the ways that I told myself that this person couldn't exist. And so now we're doing that work. Now I'm processing through those things and better understanding, like, how I got here. How did I not believe that she held any worth? How did I question it? How did I not allow myself to show up? How did I get here? So yes, we have to go back there. We have to reprocess those things. We have to remember what those core memories are in order for us to fully heal from them. If not, we're just masking and putting on a brave face. But I promise you it's going to come back up and it'll hurt even worse every time that it does. So start tracking back. Start processing that stuff. I promise you it's going to hurt, but it's going to heal. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.